Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the Gospel of Luke, and we're in chapter 8, and we're going to begin today with verse 22. Between verse 22 and the end of the chapter, we have three stories that are in the other two synoptic Gospels, Matthew um, and Mark. But we have them connected as they are in Mark's gospel, and Mark's gospel has more detail um, in these stories than Luke does, but they are connected and they are presented point by point, really the way um, Mark does, and that's one of the reasons I really believe Luke had access to Mark's gospel. As he tells us, others had written gospels, and he did his research at the very beginning of his gospel. It's not a way of saying it wasn't inspired. It's just that was the process of inspiration. Luke, did his research, and the Holy Spirit, through that research, made sure every word on the page was the one word that was the word that God wanted on that page. Um, and and so we have these three accounts linked together. We have the stilling of the storm, the healing of Legion, and then we have the double miracle of Jairus' daughter and the woman who had the hemorrhage. And Luke is going to tell these stories point by point, exactly the way Mark does, with this exception. Mark is a better storyteller. Um, I'm not saying Mark is a better gospel writer. You can't say that. The Holy Spirit inspired all four, but just in terms of someone who can tell a story in such a way that it's riveting. Um, Mark is better than that. Mark's gospel is better than that than these. And if you read them side by side, I think you'll see that's the case. And we'll notice some storytellers' choices that Luke makes that are different from the one what he read in Mark, and uh, and uh, and how it changes um, just the way our attention is held a bit. Okay, Luke chapter 8, and I'm going to begin reading with verse 22. We're going to read through verse 25. It came about on one of those days that he got into a boat, and his disciples, he and his disciples, and said to them, "Let us go over to the other side of the lake." And they launched out. But as they were sailing along, he fell asleep. And a fierce gale of wind descended upon the lake, and they began to be swamped and to be in danger. And they came to him and woke him up, saying, "Master, Master, we're perishing." And being aroused, he rebuked the wind and the surging waves, and they stopped, and it became calm. And he said to them, "Where is your faith?" And they were fearful and amazed, saying to one another, "Who then is this, that he commands even the winds and the waters to obey him?" One of the things Mark does in these stories is use the word fear, and he creates a great deal of tension and fear in the story. But he doesn't use the word fear until after Jesus has brought calm, because the calm of Jesus is stronger than anything we're afraid of. And that, whether we notice that or not, we feel it when we read those stories. Mark also tells us that Jesus is asleep in the back of the boat with his head laying on a leather seat cushion for a pillow. Mark also talks about the water from the wind coming into the boat and about to sink the boat. That they don't just say, "Help us." They say, "Master, do you not care that we are perishing?" We have Jesus, just so bluntly and abruptly saying, "Stop it, be quiet," to the winds and the waves. I mean, it's a much more vivid. You can hear the wind blow when you're reading Mark. Um, this is more a guy relating events to you that he needs you to know. But in both cases, the fear is of the calm. Um, and they're wondering, who is this? And and he features that question really more because it's left there hanging at the end of so his Luke's lesson is a little different than Mark's. He's letting us know that they're not sure yet who Jesus is. They're just completely blown away by him. That's interesting. Okay. So that's Luke's telling of the parable, or excuse me, of the miracle of the stilling of the storm. So we'll talk about Legion next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.